Real Enigmas and Theories is back again with another video. So we're going to jump into this recap for episode 2 of season 3. But before we do that, on your way in, please hit that like button, share this video, drop a comment. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that and hit the notification bell for when I drop videos and I go live. Let's go. This episode starts off with Jade and Victor inside the gas station / bar with all the animals that they've managed to save. And the animals return the favor by destroying the contraption that Jade had up trying to figure out the symbols. I'm sure that Jade and Victor probably heard the screams of Tien Chen throughout the night. And so now that the sun is up, Jade goes to check on Boyd in the barn. He gets there and sees Tien Chen's mangled up body laying against some wooden boxes. And Boyd is still cuffed to the post. He's repeating the words in Cantonese that Tien Chen was saying while she was being tortured. I'm sure he wanted to remember those so that he can say that to Kenny. Jade frees Boyd from the post, and Boyd immediately runs over to Tien Chen's lifeless body, and he mourns the death of our favorite pancake chef. We then cut to a scene with Kenny sleeping in the cabin, and we hear Jim calling him from outside to come and look at what he has discovered by the lake. Jim has found a bunch of food planted all along the lake, and Jim celebrates by telling Kenny that this is enough food to feed the entire town and tosses him a head of cabbage, and Kenny catches it with a smile on his face. I wonder whose food that was. Then we cut to the title credits. And after we get back from the title credits, we cut to a scene where Tabitha and Henry are inside of the living room. Henry explains that Tabitha fell asleep on the porch and he brought her in there. However, he's sitting there with a pistol waiting on her to wake up. Her noticing the toast on his lap makes her reconsider and think that she might have made a mistake by coming out here. She gets up and tries to leave, and Henry holds her at gunpoint. And he wants answers about where she got his son's lunchbox from. He's called the police on her, and she tries to explain to him, but Henry isn't having it. The scene ends with Tabitha claiming to know how she can prove what she's saying is true. And then we cut to a scene of the clinic where Sarah comes in to tell Christy about the death of Tien Chen. Christy is not too cool about her being there. Sarah gets the message and leaves. Mari comes out to ask Christy who was at the door, only to find out that it was about Kenny's mother. We then cut to that infamous scene from the teaser and trailer of Boyd and Jade pulling the cart with Tien Chen's body inside. I thought that it might have been 2 people in there, but now we know that it was 1. They arrive at the church, and Boyd carries her body into the church as Jade guides Boyd to the bed where Father Khatri used to sleep to lay down the body of Tien Chen. This is where we see Jade ask Boyd how is he still alive after being in the barn with the creatures. And Boyd tells Jade that the monsters made him watch as they tortured our favorite pancake chef. Boyd then leaves the church, and as he walks through all of the townspeople that are watching them go and pull the cart, he begins to get flashbacks of the torture scene inside of the barn. And that was definitely one of my predictions for this season, that we were going to see the slow walkers get busy. And by the time we all realized that it was Tien Chen, I knew that it was going to be her that we would see this demonstrated on. And as Boyd is making his way to the post office, Donna comes running down the road from Colony House to meet with him and find out about the news of Tien Chen. Then we cut to a scene inside of the house with Ethan and Julie crying over the death of the Lonely Dragon. Victor then comes in to grab some of his drawings, which he ends up dropping on the way out, and expresses his rageful sorrow by screaming at Ethan and Julie about the harsh realities of death in this place. Victor leaves in his fit of rage as the heaviness of the situation moves in this cold reality to Julie and Ethan. So then we cut to a scene with Tabitha and Henry searching online for some of the missing people that still are in Frumlin. We see the Matthews family's missing poster on Henry's computer screen. Henry still doesn't believe Tabitha and he's struggling with slapping the shit out of somebody who won't give him answers about his missing family and his son's lunchbox. But then Tabitha mentions the children in the tower, and Henry acts as if he's heard this story before. Just then, the police knock on the door, but Henry does a complete 180 and decides to tell the cop that he's made a mistake. He expresses to the police that he owes them a dozen. I'm sure he was talking about donuts, but we also know that eggs come by the dozen. And that's what I was talking about in my last video about the eggs in Victor's lunchbox. But we'll talk about that in my esoteric breakdown. He tells Tabitha about him purchasing that pistol 40 years ago after the disappearance of his family and offered to make her something to eat. We then cut to a scene with Donna and Boyd inside of the post office, and Boyd explaining about his decision to go and save the animals. And Donna is clearly upset with his decision that cost the life of Tien Chen. This is where we get that infamous line from the trailers of Donna's where she says that the game is rigged. Then we go to a scene where Fatima is still kneeling at the nasty Colony House toilet again with the morning sickness. But this time, Ellis is the one knocking on the door while she spits. He's concerned about her and he's trying to urge her to go out to the clinic to see Christy. She refuses at first, but after pulling out a whole wisdom tooth, she decides that it might not be a bad idea to go see Christy. So Ellis and Fatima arrive at the clinic to see Christy, but she's not there. She's actually out there dealing with Kenny and the loss of his mother. However, Mari is an actual pediatric nurse, and she convinces Fatima and Ellis to let her give Fatima a prenatal examination. We then cut to a scene with Boyd and Christy standing outside of the pool discussing the owners of the truck that ran through that gate and ended up inside of that pool. The couple's name was Danny and Shay. And Christy talks to Boyd about what happened to Tien Chen and expresses to him that it wasn't his fault. A lot like his conversation with her about what Sarah did. And while they're talking, Jim and Kenny arrive back to town with the food they found by the cabins. All the townspeople are outside and they come to inspect the findings of Jim and Kenny, but also express their sorrow for the loss of Tien Chen. And as the news about her death becomes more obvious to Kenny, he begins to call out to his mother in Cantonese before realizing the horrible truth. And Christy and Boyd try to comfort him. However, he storms away off to the diner and Christy follows. Then we cut to a scene inside the diner where Clara is there doing I don't know what, and her eye is healed. I want to mention that again. She leaves as Kenny comes in, visibly shaken by the death of his mother, and Christy follows him in there to let him know that his mother's body is in the church. Kenny tells Christy that he needs some time to sit and think for a minute, and Christy sits down to join him at a distant booth while he sat at the counter. Then we cut to a scene back in the clinic with Ellis, Fatima, and Mari in the middle of a prenatal examination. Fatima expresses that she hasn't been able to keep down any food for about the last 4 days. And Mari explains to the newly expecting couple that for the most part, everything that Fatima is experiencing is pretty normal. Mari leaves to give the couple some time and talk, and we cut to a scene of Christy and Kenny back in the diner where Kenny inquires about the suffering of his mother. And he asks Christy to make sure the body looks good when he comes to the church to view her. Christy promises, and she leaves the diner to see what she can do about the body of Kenny's mother. And what seems to be one of the most inappropriate songs to come on at the worst possible time is Celebrate by Kool and the Gang. And I have to admit that when this song came on, I bust out laughing. However, I had to think about it for a second. And I understand that there are a lot of times where a funeral is referred to as a celebration of life. And I'm not saying that this is what it is, but what if that was Tien Chen telling Kenny to celebrate her life instead of mourning her death? This is also the scene where we get to see Kenny destroy the music box that we seen in the trailer. Then we cut to a scene back at the house of Tien Chen where Jim comes into the door to see his children. and he and Julie have a bit of a heated exchange. And right after that, we go right back to Tabitha and Henry as she's eating, while Henry explains that his wife was hearing voices and seeing visions just like Tabitha. He goes on to say that the investigating detective was the only person that he disclosed that information to, and that detective passed away over 20 years ago. Henry takes her upstairs to the childhood bedroom of Victor and Eloise. And Henry is still grappling with the possibility of Tabitha actually getting the lunchbox from Victor and the possibility of this just being an elaborate hoax. And as Tabitha stands in the door frame right next to all of the picture frames, she states that she may have been sent to this place to find him, in which he replies that she has most likely came for what's in the basement. Then we go to a scene where Jade is at the church with the body of Kenny's mother, and Christy comes in to prepare the body so that Kenny can view his mother. Jade starts to leave, but Christy asks him to stay, being that she wants to do this the right way and that she's not a mortician. So we cut to a scene where Ellis and Fatima have returned from the clinic, and Fatima urges Ellis to go speak with his father while she goes inside to get some rest. Ellis gives Fatima Mari's magic potion, as he calls it, gives her a kiss, and walks off. But just before going inside, Fatima begins to smell the rotten vegetables from the poisoned soil on the Colony House porch. The girl Nikki is there, and she apologizes for the way she acted the day before at the bathroom. After she leaves, Fatima does the strangest thing and begins to eat the rotten vegetables from the soil. I remember in my last video, I stated that possibly the fertility from the soil had been transferred into Fatima, and now we see Fatima eating the rotten vegetables that were growing in that tainted soil. Just a little something to think about. We then connect to a scene where Donna is butchering the cow that had been killed the night before by the milkman monster. Then Ethan shows up, and he asks a strange question about the body of Tien Chen in comparison to the body of the cow that's being butchered. Donna goes to speak with him, and he abruptly lets her know that he's on his way out of there and he's leaving. We then cut back to the church where Christy and Jade are preparing the body of Kenny's mother, and Sarah shows up with a blue-green foliage dress that she claims Tien Chen used to like, and she thought that it would be a good idea to bring it to them while they were preparing her body for Kenny. And speaking of Kenny, we cut to a scene where Kenny and Boyd are inside of the bar, and Kenny is filling up jugs with the alcohol from the distillery that Jade created so that he can go burn all of the creatures. And Boyd, being the stand-up guy that he is, he agrees to go with Kenny and go burn all of these creatures. And we cut to a scene with them standing out there, it's snowing, and they're getting ready to literally go into the tunnels, find the creatures, and burn them all, even if they don't make it out. However, this is the scene where Boyd actually tells Kenny the words that his mother was saying in Cantonese. Kenny breaks down, and they decide to go back into town without going into the tunnels, wandering into the dark. I think that was a good move. So we cut to a scene where Christy and Jade are finishing up the preparations so that Kenny can come view the body of his mother. And just then Kenny shows up. He walks past everyone, and he goes to view his mother's body, and he caresses her forehead while making peace with her passing. Very touching scene, very great acting from Kenny. All of the actors really wore their parts out, definitely. So we cut to a scene outside of the church where we see the townspeople arriving to the church for the funeral service of Tien Chen. Sarah is outside on the porch of her old house that she shared with her brother, right across the street from the church. And Julie comes up to speak with her and thank her for saving the life of her and her brother. She also states to Sarah that she feels like this place has gotten into her head, and she was reluctant to say it, but she didn't want to end up like Sarah. The scene then cuts to Henry and Tabitha coming downstairs into the basement of Victor's childhood home. Henry begins to tell the story about how Victor's mother and himself had been hippies and done a lot of drugs. But that all stopped when she got pregnant with Victor. But after they had 2 children, Miranda decided one day to take her children to her mother's place so Henry and her could be alone and maybe go on one more acid trip. But that's where she started hearing voices and painting the stories of the strange visions that she was having while on that acid trip. Henry goes on to describe the town as we know it based on the memories of Miranda's riddles. The scene cuts to the funeral of Tien Chen while we hear the voiceover of Henry describing the town. We cut back to the basement and see many things that we recognize in the paintings and many things that we do not recognize in the paintings. We get the look on Tabitha's face as she comes to the realization that Miranda had been seeing some of the same things that she was seeing. The scene cuts to the church, and outside people are leaving after the service. And Boyd and Ellis begin to talk, and Boyd asks his son for his help to catch one of these creatures. Down the street, Jim and his children are also outside. While Jim heads to the house, Ethan and Julie head up to Colony House. Jim goes in the house, and while he's in the kitchen, the phone rings. Jim answers the phone, and it's a child's voice claiming to be Thomas, the child that passed away and fell off of the changing table. What an episode, what a cliffhanger. I definitely have to say that this is my favorite episode of the series so far. I mean, we did have a banger episode with the Colony House Massacre. We had another crazy episode when Boyd killed Smiles Davis in season 2. But this episode is the best to me just with the information that Henry drops alone. And did you notice the egg plate that Tien Chen's face was on at the funeral? Yeah, I brought up eggs before. And as I told you, we're going to talk about that a little bit in my esoteric breakdown. So this is just the recap. And if you like the recap, go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, share the video, and drop a comment, and let's get the YouTube conversation started. Anyway, just a little something to think about while we wait on the next episode. That's all for my video today. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.